What's up, guys? Welcome back to another edition of Uncle Stevie's Nephews podcast. It's me, Brian. I'm joined with Frank and Spencer. It's a much different week in Mets land for us coming into this week. The Mets are now 7-4 after today's game. They ended up beating the Rockies 2-1, having a 5-1 week, which beats any of our predictions. I think Spencer was the closest with 4-2. So good job, Spencer, I guess. But what did you guys think of today's game?
I think the storyline has got to be the continued starting pitching, keeping them in games, because the fact that they only scored 2 runs but still were able to win in a ballpark like Coors Field, I mean, that really shows you just the value of starting pitching and how this is a game that they probably don't win last year. When Marcus Stroman opted out, you're looking at Rick Porcello pitching this game, maybe Michael Waka, or who knows who else would have been pitching today with all the games that have been postponed and everything like that. So it's just good to see that, last year the struggles were the starting rotation. So you want to try to improve on that, and having Marcus Stroman come back and seeing Taijuan Walker, these other guys pitch well, it's a really welcome change, and hopefully it continues. Stroman on the contract of the year, he has to keep pitching like this if he wants to get the big payday.
Spencer, what did you think?
I mean, I'd have to agree. Pitching is the key part of what's going to hopefully continue our success. I mean, we're going to talk later on with a bunch of different people coming back to rotation, but the bullpen does need a little bit more of a revamp for sure. We lucky that we got the win today, and then we went 1-1 yesterday. But I think we still have a little bit to improve as far as bullpen wise for the whole season. Because I don't think honestly that we're going to last. Success is going to last the whole year. We're going to get a really big streak or losing streak, I think, as far as bullpen. I don't want to blow too many games.
Yeah. I think obviously today's game, it didn't really highlight the bullpen struggles, but yesterday's game with Barnes, I mean, I know Barnes is like one of the Barnes and Caselman are two of the lower ranking bullpen pitchers for the Mets, but Caselman looked good. Barnes did not. Not to get too far into that game, but I think Luis Rojas kept Barnes in a little too longer. I mean, he got it to 4-2, and I think that was when he should have been taken out, but Luis Rojas decided to stretch him a little too long and gave up that home run to Fuentes. But my thoughts on the game today, obviously offense continues to struggle, and the only reason the Mets are where they are right now is because of the pitching. I mean, Marcus Stroman has been outstanding, 0.89 ERA, only gave up 3 hits in Coors Field, and there was a point where it was only gave up 1 hit, I think, through like 6-7 innings. Insane. Like, he's a total different pitcher than what we're used to as Mets fans with the strikeouts and everything like that. He just knows how to do it by letting players hit the ball, and he knows how to do it perfectly. The only pitcher, I know there's been a lot more, but like Bartolo Colon was someone like that I remember allowed players to hit the ball, and it just relied on their fielding. And I mean, Marcus Stroman has shown that he's been able to do it really well this season. We're going to talk about this too later, but having a Jacob deGrom who has a 0.45 ERA and then a Marcus Stroman following that up with a 0.89. I know it's a small sample size, but that's insane.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like I said, the offense continues to struggle, but the other thing from this game, Edwin Diaz came in, pitched really well again. I was looking at the stats before getting all this ready, and I mean, he's had 4 straight games where he's looked really good. He had that little, I wouldn't say like blow up, but not a great game on the April 10th against the Marlins, where he gave up 2 earned runs. And I mean, he's shown that he is a very solid pitcher with 4 straight really good outings. And it's not just outings where he got lucky, like he's blown away the hitters. And I mean, yesterday's game in specifics, he struck out the side and looked outstanding. And with that walk-up song that I know everyone keeps talking about, but in Citi Field, when it's a full packed stadium, it's going to go crazy if he becomes like that pitcher that he's supposed to be. Yeah. So what do you guys think about Edwin Diaz so far?
I think it's awesome to see that he's almost coming together. I mean, 2020, a lot of people even think that he didn't have a good season in 2020, but he had a sub-2 ERA. I know, again, I guess you could say small sample size with only 60 games. So he probably put maybe 39, 40 games of work, but he improved a lot from 2019. He's slowly but surely getting back to where he was in 2018 as an all-star with Seattle. And that's exactly what we need when we traded for him. I mean, we gave away Kalenic, one of our biggest prospects. So we need a big change in return from Diaz. I think he's slowly but surely proving going to be that.
And we also took back Robinson Cano to make things even more difficult. So that was the other part of that trade. But I think the encouraging thing from Edwin Diaz is the fact that he did this in back-to-back nights. That's not something always easy to do. You're in Coors Field, it's cold, and he looked great last night striking out the side. And to play the end of the game where McCann threw out the runner, Diaz threw 101. And that definitely was a bit eye-opening. But the main key is the fact that he's not giving up the long ball. That's where crushing him in 19 was all the times. It's a close game, home run, game over. But the fact that his slider is not hanging as much, his fastball has good life to it. He's missing bats. That's what Edwin Diaz is. We talk about Stroman, pitch to contact, get the ground ball. Diaz is a strikeout pitcher. Like his strikeouts per nine are just crazy. So it's just good to see that he is, we gave up a lot for this guy. So we need to get that return on investment. He's still young. And, if Stroman goes 8, Diaz gives you the 9th, that's a good combination, good recipe for success. DeGrom had a start where he went 8 innings as well. So, the fact that we're getting the length out of these pitchers, even DeGrom started yesterday, he goes 6 innings, boom, Diaz gives you the 7th. So that kind of formula is really, really good for the Mets. It's one of the main reasons why they have this winning streak. These are 1-run games that Diaz is coming in. It's not like, this was a 3-run game, and when Diaz gave up a run or two, he got the save. No, these were tight 1-run games. This time, Diaz went through the heart of the Rockies order, Story and McMahon and Charlie Blackmon, and he was able to get out of it. So you got to give him a ton of credit for his start.
Yeah, from that, kind of switching gears a little bit, we can totally talk about the James McCann throw at the end of the game. There's not a lot to pick apart there, but Wilson Ramos would never be able to do that. And James McCann deserves a lot of that credit, but Francisco Lindor put down a really good tag that I don't know if another shortstop for the Mets could have done that. Seeing James McCann be able to do that kind of continues to prove the reason that we see Wilson Ramos. I don't know what he's been doing this week, but I don't know if he still has 6 home runs where he's at with that and his power, but
he didn't lose them. He still has them, but he hasn't really added on to it.
Yeah. No, but I'm saying I'm saying
he took away. They're like, we don't need him anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm saying his hot streak to start the season, obviously that hurts me a little bit because why couldn't he do that with the Mets? And James McCann hasn't done that with the Mets yet, but the reason James McCann is here is for his defense and a little bit of his off. And that's always something I have to keep in mind when he makes plays like that. It makes me happy to see because that's why we have him. Okay, going from there, we can talk about yesterday. The Mets went 1-1 in their doubleheaders, starting with Jacob deGrom, who in the beginning did not look that sharp, was throwing like 97. I was like, why is he throwing 97? He's injured and things like that. Like all those
97 is not good.
Yeah.
By his standards, it isn't.
And then he started to figure it out. He made whatever adjustment he had to, or he just needed to get warmed up more because it was cold yesterday. Maybe that was part of it. But then he started pitching 100, 101. He had 9 strikeouts in a row, which was crazy to watch. It's like they just have to make contact, but they simply couldn't make contact, which was crazy. Last start, I thought he was really dominant against the Marlins, but this start, the beginning obviously wasn't good, but he looked even more dominant when he figured it out. And totaled 14 strikeouts. He did give up 3 runs, whatever that inning was, but they weren't earned runs because Jeff McNeil made that error. He lowers his ERA to 0.45, which is just crazy to look at.
I think my mood, it switched so quick because, DeGrom, he was 1 strike away from tying the all-time record of most consecutive strikeouts. That was held by Tom Seaver. So that would have been pretty interesting, a Met breaking a Met record. But, he was rolling, and then you have the error by McNeil. Conforto also a couple mishaps in right field, not playing the ball correctly off the wall. The throw to the runner tagging up was not a good throw. So you're looking at, not only that, but throughout the course of the game, Mets got the leadoff hit. I think it was 4 straight innings, if I'm not mistaken. And they weren't able to really capitalize off that, get those runners home. So between the defense, between stranding the base runners, and DeGrom is trying to set records out here. And this guy's about to lose a third, all his third start, about to lose all 3 of them. And, the Mets weren't scoring. The Colorado Rockies took the lead. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. The Mets are really going to lose like this. Then all of a sudden, they slowly but surely made that comeback. VR, another clutch hit. And, I was happy when DeGrom was rolling. I was upset when, when the Rockies took the lead. And I was like, oh, that's a game over. Then the Mets took the lead. I was like, oh, my gosh. It definitely was an emotional roller coaster, but that's a typical Met game pretty much. You can't just have easy cruise and 10-0, let's go home. That's a Met game for you.
Yeah, definitely makes the game interesting. I'll say that for sure.
Maybe a little too interesting.
Yeah.
But another thing from that game is Francisco Lindor probably had his biggest hit as a Met, driving in the winning run. And that is something we're going to talk about later on. So I won't go too much into Francisco Lindor, but Jonathan VR has definitely been a nice surprise for the Mets. He started out this season and he wasn't playing that well, especially during spring training. He was terrible and was injured during spring training for a little bit of that too. And Mets fans did not want him on the team, but I think a lot of Mets fans are happy he's on the team right now for the clutch hits that he's been able to provide. Was a nice substitute or alongside Luis Guillorme when JD Davis was out. But yeah, Jonathan VR has been nice to see. Jacob deGrom, like we said, amazing. I don't think we have to talk about that too much more, but we're going to kind of switch over, not really, but the DeGrom Stroman 1-2 duo when Noah Syndergaard and Carlos Carrasco come back. I mean, this rotation, unless there's injuries, and which always sucks because there could definitely be injuries. You have Taijuan Walker as your fifth starter, which is simply insane because of how good Taijuan Walker's pitched so far this season. I always like, okay, David Peterson would be fine, but he would be out of the rotation, which even is more insane about their rotation. So it'd be
you got it right for the most part. Now Walker's going to be the 5, and it's like, okay, does Lucchesi go to the pen? Do you send Dave Pearson down? Because both those guys have the minor league options. That definitely comes into play. Walker's deal is a multi-year deal. And again, this guy has a great career ERA. First 2 starts, very good. He pitches again on Tuesday against the Cubs lineup that has been struggling for the most part. So I hope he could do that again. I mean, and it really is crazy to think about that. David Pearson, who pitched so wonderfully against the Philadelphia Phillies that last start, to go to the minor leagues.
Yeah,
I mean, now that's starting pitching depth right there. And I think
that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good sign because when we have these double headers in June or August or whatever, we could call up their Pearson. We can call up Jordan Yamamoto to make those starts. So, I mean, again, just the drastic change from last year to this year, the wealth of pitching. So encouraging.
I feel like I can't, like, if David Peterson continues to pitch how he has been, and I know he had that first start that wasn't that good, but he did pitch pretty well in that start. It was just unfortunate timing with the runs and everything like that. Like, I would feel really bad if he gets sent to the minors. Like, he definitely doesn't deserve that at all. I think like putting him in the bullpen would make the most sense for the Mets. I know like you kind of want to keep him in the minors to get him like as much pitching as possible, but could be such an asset for the Mets, especially in their bullpen, that if there's more injuries or if they continue to not be the best bullpen, maybe he could be a really good addition, turn into like a Seth Lugo type, which would be really cool. I don't know. I mean, I'm really looking forward to when Carlos Carrasco and Syndergaard come back, just because I want to see them pitch first off. But the rotation, I mean, just after today's game when Marcus Stroman again pitched really well, everyone was tweeting about how good this rotation is going to be. And I mean, with that rotation, you don't need that much scoring, but I would like to see this lineup start to figure it out. Next up, now we're going to get into the offense, which is somewhat of a good transition. So Brandon Nimmo, I mean, has been on fire. He had somewhat of an off day today, lowering his average to 447. The fact that getting, 2 hits today is a struggle for Brandon Nimmo and lowered his batting average just goes to show how good he's been. Getting on base, he has 17 hits and 38 at bats. As I said, is a batting average of 447. Consistently gets on, is turning into like the perfect number 1 hitter for the Mets. Maybe he doesn't have amazing speed, but he gets on base, whether it be walks, whether it be getting hits. It's just great to see. It's really good to see that Brandon was turning into a player, maybe not to the degree that Mets fans thought when he was first drafted, but he's turning into a very valuable player for the Mets. And I mean, if he continues or is anywhere close to how he's been to start the season, which I don't think he's going to be, I think he's a streaky hitter, but I mean, he's been really, really fun to watch.
As far as Brandon Nimmo, I mean, one of the things I really think that sets him apart sometimes is not just the training you do, but it's your mindset. And we've seen through social media, at least, that we get to see on the outside look from the Mets, players like Nimmo and sometimes Conforto, not so as much, but definitely Lindor, Mr. Smile, his nickname. It's the positive attitude they bring to the plate. And that's definitely attributes to how they're going to play in the game. That clubhouse is on fire right now. They've got to be like going crazy, like after all these wins that they've had, 5-1, like, come on, it's crazy. But I think he's going to continue to improve. And I think that next step would, like, just like you said, he's not as fast. If he's going to be a 5-tool player in the future for the Mets, that's his next step. And then working on his defense as well. Get the stolen bases up. Let's work on base running, which is a thing the Mets have struggled on for at least the past 5 years. And if he can do that, then maybe him and Conforto could run the team in the future with Lindor in the infield. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think his speed is a little underrated because he had that really nice infield single against the Phillies when Rhys Hoskins tried to beat him to the bag. He couldn't. He did steal a base today, so that was good to see. I mean, he did get thrown out. I forget what game it was, but I'd like to see him be a little more aggressive, as being the leadoff hitter. top on base percentage in all of baseball. Over the last few years, he's a top 5 on base percentage in all of baseball. So that's kind of the player he is. And they talked about on the broadcast today, but him not going for a launch angle swing, you notice that all of his base hits are singles, they're line drives on the ground, whatever it takes. And that's what you got to do as the leadoff hitter. When you have such a, on paper, a prolific lineup of all-star players like Lindor, like Alonso, like McNeil, Conforto, Dom Smith is all-star caliber, that's what you got to do is get on base. These other guys will bring you home. And however you do it, whether it's a single, a walk, hit by pitch, Nimmo is finding a lot of different ways to do it. His outfield defense has improved because they're playing him deeper. He made a really nice catch at the wall today. So, that definitely was a big time one of Rob Trevor's story. So you have to love everything you see from him. Brings, like you said, the positive attitude, fits in with the clubhouse. I mean, you really couldn't ask more from this guy. And he has a on-base streak dating back to last year. He's gone on base every single game this year so far. So, and you really, like you said, Brian, his average lowers to 447. Like, that's still a pretty good day at the office. So, I mean, you got to love.
Yeah, he's like really fun to watch. He's one of those players that, like, if I was watching, if he was on the opposing team, I'd get so mad about, because he just gets these long at bats and gets the walks, gets to 3-2, runs down to first base when he gets a walk. But I still don't understand like the mindset there. But like, I mean, if it works for you, it works for you. So just go for it. But he's been really fun to watch, and I don't want to like have my pessimistic side come out, but I'm just like waiting for him to get on one of those streaks where he doesn't know how to hit. And it has happened for Nimmo in the past, where he goes through these streaks where he just can't buy himself a hit. But if this keeps lasting, I mean, sky's the limit. Next up, Michael Conforto. Last week when we recorded this podcast, I mean, he was struggling beyond belief. Could not get a hit, could not get hits with runners in scoring position. I don't know what his stats are with runners in scoring position for this week, but I mean, he's definitely been hitting. Coming to Colorado has definitely been nice for him. I think he had 2 hits yesterday, 2 hits today, double today, double and a single. I mean, these are just really encouraging things to see from Michael Conforto. If you can get Michael Conforto start rolling, and even if he stays in the 6th spot or wherever he ends up, I mean, once you have Michael Conforto in this lineup actually doing what Michael Conforto does, it's such a huge plus. And we knew that Michael Conforto was going to turn it around, and I think he's starting to. I wouldn't say he's fully turned it around, but he's definitely starting to pick it up. And I mean, I would like to see him go back to the 3-hole, but Dom Smith has definitely been really good. I think Michael Conforto in the 3-hole just totally, what's it called? Not expands your lineup.
Lengthens.
Sure. Yeah, lengthens your lineup tremendously. And I am really looking forward to when he really starts getting going. And I think this is just the start of one of his hot streaks. What do you guys think?
I mean, I sure hope so. I mean, the thing is that, like, the couple hits he had today, it's when the runners were not in scoring position.
Right. I don't know.
Like when the bases were empty.
The Mets as a whole are struggling with runners.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't really have many opportunities today, but, you wouldn't like to see that happen. I mean, yesterday he batted 3rd in one of the games and he was struggling. I think it was the 2nd game, if I'm not mistaken. He batted 3rd and he struck out like every time. Him and Alonso, they both struck out like every time they batted, 3 strikeouts each. Yep. So, stuff like that is still happening from Michael. But like we said, we do expect him. He will be better than this eventually. But as far as the 3-hole, I think it's kind of going to be a revolving door between Dom, Conforto, and maybe even Jeff McNeil or Francisco Lindor. I think whoever's swinging the hot bat deserves to be batting, 2 or 3, because we know that Jeff McNeil could be a 320 hitter at some point. But as of right now, he's still at 176. So, once Jeff McNeil fully gets it going, or if Mike Conforto, last year he had a 300 average. So if he could get up to that level again, he's willing to bat 3rd. Dom had over 300 average last year. So, you really got to wait for these guys to get going. And that comes down to rhythm. With all these games being canceled, it's hard for McCann or Alonso or whoever to really get that full rhythm that these guys spent all of spring training trying to get. And the fact that the first 3 games of the season were canceled, a lot of spring training was wasted, because now you finally got your rhythm, you're ready to play, and you feel like you're starting all over from square one again. You play 2 days, you rest for 2 days, and that might happen again this week, because tomorrow's an off day. Tuesday, there's snow in the forecast for Chicago. So again, you play 2 days, you rest 2 days. So I just like, when do we get to play like 3-4 days in a row, just so that these Conforto, these other guys can get going? I mean, a bizarre start to the season. But listen, despite the weather, despite the people getting sick, as long as the Mets are winning ball games, do it however you need to. We swept the doubleheader against Philadelphia, which is not easy to do, no matter who your opponent is in a doubleheader. So just got to keep things like that going, because if we saw in 2015, if you have the rotation you're in every game. So all you need is a couple things to go your way. Rojas, don't do anything stupid. Just make the routine plays. Get at least a couple hits for runners on base, and you're good.
Yeah, just like you said, the pitching's there, hitting's contagious. So as long as some people are starting to roll the ball, like Nimmo, like you said, positive attitude, and the guy we're going to talk about next, so Lindor, he'll be coming up. But if everyone slowly jumps on that train and starts chugging and plowing, all of a sudden Padres don't look that far away. I think they have a strong team. Definitely not as strong as the Dodgers, but the Padres will not look that far away from the Mets, not even the Braves. Like, I think we have a shot if we continue on this hot streak of hitting and obviously the pitching as well.
Yeah, that's something people have been talking about. I mean, the Mets are 7-4 and their offense isn't even rolling yet. And
yeah,
like that could be scary if they get their pitching and offense rolling at the same time. And I mean, the thing with this team compared to 2015, let's just say the pitching continues how it is. The offense in 2015, specifically to start the season, was terrible. And this year, barring any injuries, is a really, really, really good lineup. And I mean, those two things together should lead to a lot of success. And one thing's for sure. I mean, Brandon Nimmo is the only one in this lineup that's really doing really well. I think Pete Alonso had a nice series with Colorado for sure. Maybe he'll start to turn it around. But one thing that Frank said that is true, there's a lot of people in this lineup that can be a 3-hitter if they're going right. I mean, like you said, Dom Smith, Jeff McNeil. I mean, I don't want to see with this lineup JD Davis bat third ever, but like there was a time last year where he was
mostly the 3-hitter. Because they needed right-handed balance. Because everyone that had good seasons last year was all left-handed. Like we talked about, McNeil, Dom, Conforto, all left-handed. So you needed somebody to split them up to bat right-handed. Alonso was struggling, Ramos was struggling, Rosario was struggling. So it was like J.D. Davis by default was the number 3 hitter for a majority of the season. And I think Lindor could be another guy that you could bat third, because if you have Nimmo gets on base at a high clip, Jeff McNeil, we saw him today. He got an RBI just by getting a ground out. So you know that McNeil, even though McNeil's not hitting, he's not striking out either. He's still putting bat on ball. So he's a good number 2 hole here because he can move that guy over. Then Lindor gives you that balance, split up your lefties or whatever, whoever you want to back clean up, maybe Alonso, maybe Conforto. But there definitely is, this lineup is so deep, like you said, Brian, that you really could, move some guys around depending on the pitcher, depending on who's hot, who's cold. But I do want to see Rojas, at least he's getting a little bit of consistency lately with the lineup. He switched Conforto and McNeil today, before he had McNeil 5th, Conforto 6th. But for the most part, at least they're having a pretty steady lineup final because we were talking about in the first week, the lineup was all over the place. Right. I mean, I know JD was out, but think about opening day where Nimmo batted 8th and Pilar was leading off, and you had VR batting 6th one day, and everything was just all over the place. So, and I definitely will say that for Rojas, he is managing, I think, a little differently this week than he did last week. He's just managing like a normal manager, which is always said, like, you just be normal. Don't try to, like, there's a reason why you don't do crazy things because it doesn't work, like you don't need to be cute. Just, this, like we said, there's enough talent on this roster. Just don't screw it up, just do the normal moves.
Definitely true. I think Luis Rojas has made some actual smart managerial decisions. I was the Francisco Lindor when he was that base runner in the
extra inning game.
Yeah, was that
with the double switch. Yeah, that was against the Phillies, the game 1. I
mean, what a smart decision for him.
I didn't know that rule.
Yeah, I think it was like very recent that they added that.
Yeah, it was.
So
it was this year they added.
I'd be surprised that the umpires even knew. But just a really smart decision led to a win for the Mets. Next up, speaking of Francisco Lindor is still batting a little cold. It's a weird situation with Francisco Lindor because it's not like he's struggling like a usual person. Like a usual person would strike out a ton. He hasn't been striking out a ton. Definitely a few strikeouts here and there for sure. But the regular season, I'm looking at the stats now, is that 3 strikeouts? Can that be right? I mean, maybe.
All he does is hit ground balls to the right side if he hits the ball. It's like a walk or a ground out to second base. That's most of his at bats, and the occasional hits here. Like I say, he got the big hit yesterday, so that's been the majority of his at bats.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he's struggling like a normal player. Like I said, like Michael Conforto, when he was struggling, still semi-struggling, strikes out a ton. Francisco Lindor doesn't. I mean, he's never been a hitter that strikes out a ton. But I mean, looking at his stats right now he has a lower average than Michael Conforto, even though Michael Conforto was struggling as bad as he was. Lindor's average right now is 189. I mean, you have like one good game that brings it up to like 230, 250 at this point in the season. But I mean, I know a lot of Mets fans are like probably freaking out about how Francisco Lindor hasn't been doing anything, but you just look at what he did in spring training, and I mean, I wonder if like the uh I don't know, side effects of him signing such a long-term deal and feeling that pressure maybe he's getting to him a little bit, but I think that's just like a thing that's going to last for a very little amount of time. Maybe that's what's bothering him right now, because you saw him during spring training when he was battling to get a bigger contract. He played really well, and I think he said yesterday in an interview or something that he has like this one this one swing where he feels it and knows that he's coming out of whatever slump he's in, and he said he hasn't had it yet. And I guess for him, it's that one swing. So we're still waiting for that to happen. But like we've said, Francisco Lindor is struggling and the Mets are still 7-4. And that just goes to show you the talent on this team. What do you guys think of Lindor? Are you worried?
I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not worried too much. It stinks that he's not being amazing, but
Yeah.
like you guys said when we first started talking about him just right now, the fact that he's only struck out 3 times, at least he's making contact with the ball.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you can really ask at the end of the day, even from like little league all the way through up to the major leagues. As long as you're swinging the bat, it's gonna happen. It's like when you're playing basketball. If you keep taking shots, keep practicing, you're gonna end up making it 3. You're gonna end up dunking. It's gonna happen at some point. It's gonna go on a crazy hot streak, and we're gonna be ecstatic. And we're gonna love it. You just have to get to that point.
Yeah.
My 2 things on Lindor is, number one, he's still drawing a good amount of walks. So his on base percentage, I mean, compared to what his average is for a guy that's batting under 200, to still have the 340 on base percentage is not bad. I mean, a couple of days ago it was like 380. But the other thing for Francisco Lindor is that if you remember in spring training, the first few games, he was struggling exactly like this. A lot of ground balls, no extra base hits, no like big time power. Then once guys rhythm, you saw just about every other day this guy was hitting a big time home run. So I still think that comes back to all these games being postponed and things like that. He just can't get that rhythm again. Once he gets that rhythm and he can start driving the ball, that's when I really think you see these big time hits going to happen, because too many times, I don't think, has he batted right-handed this year yet? I mean, he probably did on opening day against Matt Moore and against Rogers, but most of his at-bats are left-handed. So, like, you're just not seeing that juice off the bat quite yet. Like, it's a lot of just rolling over, ground balls to the right side. So you hope that eventually he could probably get that swing that he's talking about where he really drives the ball. I mean, there's one nice swing was today. We hit the foul ball, and then he was looking at his thumb and things like that. So, I mean, I don't know if maybe the cold was bothering him or if his thumb was bothering him or things like that. He took a foul ball off his knee. I don't know if I think it was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, and won the game. So, there could be a lot of different reasons, but at least the defense is still very good as well. He's made plenty. We talk about the tag he made, at the end of the game, but for the most part, he's making a ton of really, really nice defensive plays at shortstop. The double play combination of Lindor and McNeil is beautiful. I mean, it's much better than Cano Rosario, that's for sure. So I think that, I'm not worried. This is a guy that a lot of people could say is a debatable top 10 player. We saw the same thing happen in spring training. I do think he will break out of it. I mean, he's too good to not break out of it. I mean, I just can't see Lindor being a guy that he played his heart out, got the contract extension, and he's like, oh, no, I'm not going to try anymore. Like, Lindor's still going to try. Yeah. He still is going to be an effective player. He has too much talent to be bad, so I do think he'll figure it out relatively soon.
Yeah, the only thing that I think with the contract, like maybe he feels a pressure to play up to it, and that could be bothering him a little bit. But I don't think that lasts long. Like, Francisco Lindor is a player that believes a lot in himself, and that's obvious.
That's why he asked for so much.
Yeah.
He wouldn't ask for that kind of money if he didn't think he really, could earn it in the offseason from another team if it wasn't the Mets. And like I said, some people think it's debatable top 10. So if you do get that $300 million plus deal.
Yeah, and another thing that you talked about, and he has said the same thing, is that the Mets haven't been able to get in that groove where they play like they get things moving, and they haven't been able to do that. And I think it was earlier this week, he said that could be a reason for his struggles, and that's definitely a valid reason. Yeah, I'm not worried about Francisco Lindor, but I know Mets fans, I'm sure there's a good amount of Mets fans that are, and those are just the pessimistic Mets fan. I'm a pessimistic Mets fan, but I can be smart from time and time, and I think Francisco Lindor will be totally fine. So last part of the podcast for this week is our predictions. For this week, we'll probably record next Sunday again. We have 3 games against Chicago, depending on the weather, 3 games against Washington, depending on the weather. The games with Chicago are at Chicago. The games with Washington are at Citi Field. should I ask you guys? Let me do my prediction first. It's coming off a 5-1 week. I think looking at the pitchers, I'm gonna say I don't want to be too cocky. 4-2. What do you guys think?
I don't know. I kind of want to go 5-1. I don't know why. I just feel like, you look at the matchups in this Cup Series, and it favors the Mets. I mean, you have Taijuan Walker versus Jake Arrieta tomorrow, and then after that, outside of Hendricks and Hendricks not pitching well right now against the Braves, but the Cubs rotation has not been very good. You're going to face David Peterson, you're going to face Jacob deGrom, which hopefully the Mets win the deGrom start. I know he'll pitch well, but Washington, they've been struggling. They just lost the Arizona Diamondbacks today. Steven Strasburg goes on the IL. Patrick Corbin got bombed by the Arizona Diamondbacks. So I have a good feeling about that National Series over the weekend. So I kind of want to say 5-1, but I guess I'll go 4-2. I'll go 4-2. Okay. I can't. 2 back-to-back 5-1s. I would be pleasantly surprised, but I mean, it could happen. Like 5-1, I think is reasonable, but I'll be safe and go 4-2.
All right.
I 100% agree with you, Frank. 5-1. I'm gonna lock in that answer. I'm gonna tell you why. Chicago Cubs haven't actually won more than one game in a series besides Pittsburgh Pirates. They were 2-1 and then 1-2. So I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. At one point, they were batting 149, I think, and the National.
They have the worst average in the league. They bang 184.
Yeah. So, and then Washington, they've only had one win against a playoff contending team, the Braves, and that was the beginning of the season. They won 6-5. So honestly, I don't see it as a threat. And I don't want to come off too cocky, but if the Mets are on this hot streak and they start picking up things, I really don't see these two teams as like anything. It's just shark bait. It's like the old Marlins at this point.
Yeah. I want to go 5-1 too, but I'm sticking with 4-2. That's what I said first. So that about wraps up this week's podcast. A much better week in Mets baseball than last week. Still looking for some players to pick it up a little bit, but either way, the Mets are 7-4. They're first in the NL East, and they're looking pretty strong. So thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week.